This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Hi guys, I'm here with one of the first video in my new Cosplay Basics series. In this series, I'm going to be making a bunch of different videos showing you some really basic cosplay techniques or sharing really basic cosplay knowledge to help those of you who are just starting out and don't really know what to do or where to start or really anything about cosplay, because we've all been there. So for this video, I'm going to show you guys how to create a bevel in your EVA foam. If you don't know what a bevel is, it looks something like this. It's not always a triangle all the way around. A bevel is referring to this slanted edge that one side or multiple sides of your foam may have. So to create a bevel, you're going to of course need your EVA foam. It's usually thicker foam that you do this on. I don't really know if you can create a bevel that's really worth creating because it won't be very noticeable in foam that is around like 2mm or even 3mm, because that's very thin. So usually you don't start creating bevels in foam until you get to like 4mm EVA foam and up, because that's when it becomes noticeable. You're also going to want either a pair of scissors or a box cutter, and then you're going to want a Dremel, and you're going to want 2 Dremel heads. The size of Dremel head that you use can vary. It doesn't super matter, although the smaller Dremel heads are obviously good for smaller places, for getting into smaller places. You're going to need 2 different Dremel heads. One is going to be a low grit and one is going to be a medium or high grit. The low grit is really coarse and rough, and it's a lot better for sanding away big chunks of foam, but it leaves the texture rough and torn looking. That's why you're going to also want a low or medium grit to go back over what you sanded with this piece to make it nice and smooth, because this will smooth it out. Alright, so now we're going to move into how to make the bevel. Right now, all we need is one of your cutting tools of choice. Either one works, it doesn't really matter. Pick your favorite. I usually prefer to cut it off with scissors just because that's easier for me. To start off with, you want to know which side you're going to bevel. For this example, we're going to do this side and this side of the foam. You're going to want to set this in a way that you can cut it. I'll do one side with the box cutter and the other side with scissors, just to see how much I can mess up with a box cutter. So you're going to want to put it so you can hold it, and then you're going to want to place your blade at an angle, because you just basically want to cut off this corner here. Just get off as much as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to want to make sure your box cutter is also sharper than the box cutter I'm trying to cut with now, because this is not working. Okay, but we got there. So that's the really rough edge we got going on after using the very dull box cutter. I prefer scissors though. It's a lot easier. So all you do with scissors is you put it at an angle so it's going to cut straight down this corner here and cut it off without cutting this part off, and just cut. And bam! It's kind of beveled. See, both sides are kind of beveled, although this one's rough. Sorry about that. Obviously though, that is messy and you don't want to leave it like that. So we're going to take the Dremel and we're going to Dremel this. I'm starting off using the low grit sanding bit. So when you're holding your Dremel, you're going to want to hold it so that it's at an angle with the foam. Sorry if this isn't totally in focus, but you're going to sand it this way. So you're not going to sand it straight like this, because then you're just going to take away this edge and you're going to make it flat again. You're going to sand it so that it's at the angle that you want your foam to be in, and the angle that we just cut off the excess at. That's one side. Now we will do the same for the other side. So now both of these have been sanded down, and you can see this angle and that they're pretty smooth, although the texture is still kind of rough. We're going to switch out our bits and then go back over what we just sanded. Now both the sides are nice and smooth. This is still like a little fuzzy, but that happens and is easily fixed when you prime it. This is what it looks like from the top. You can see the angle from the top. You can always adjust this angle, and doesn't always have to be this drastic. You can make it a lot more drastic or a lot less drastic depending on how angled you hold your Dremel and how angled you hold your blade or scissors when you cut it. One thing you want to make sure of and be aware of is to make sure that you are holding your Dremel at the same angle as you sand all the way down. This is also something you can go back in and fix and clean up after you've cut away or sanded away the majority of the foam. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here, where this warped in more than it did here. But you can see that on this side it's a lot more straighter than it is on this side. Like the angle starts to go this way a little tiny bit. It can also be a good thing if you do want the angle to change up depending on how the piece looks and what effect you're trying to achieve. You can change the angle that your bevel is set at and do some really cool stuff with it. I'll show you an example of making the angle a lot more drastic. Now I'm going to cut away some more foam using this low grit Dremel bit. And I'm going to clean it up using the medium grit Dremel bit. And here we have a much more drastic bevel. As you can see from this angle just how drastic that is. And it was really easy to achieve, a lot different from what we just did. Now say you've beveled it too much and you want it to be less drastic, assuming that you don't need this to be quite as wide as it is and are able to sacrifice some foam, there is a fix for it. You can go back in and just cut off some more of that foam, as much as you need. We're going to do like this much. Since it's such a small change, I just go back in with the medium grit to sand this down. I'm going to sand just this corner right here that's appearing in our foam, as you can see here. See how it's kind of flat here? I just want to smooth that out right here. I don't want to take any more away from the top or any much more away from the bottom. I'm just going to sand that out to make it a less drastic edge compared to like this one over here. There we go. We have a much less drastic edge. See the difference between the two? And the difference between it on the other side. If you didn't notice or couldn't really see, because I'm not quite sure how well my camera is picking this up, I held the Dremel a lot more straight. It wasn't quite perfectly straight, but it was a lot more straight than holding it like this, like I did earlier. It was held more like this. That kept it from taking away any more from the top, and instead it just sanded the middle section and just ever so slightly along the bottom. And that is how you create bevels in EVA foam. I'll be back with a lot more videos to help those of you who are just starting out, and I will have an entirely separate video on sanding as well as EVA foam. So make sure you stick around for those. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day and bye!